won the District 14 Enduro Championship 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Sure, yeah.
I couldn't look it up. There's nothing online.
Yeah,
I tried. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I failed as a friend.
No, you're good.
I won't hit you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
you won them, and the 07 was your first Enduro Championship, overall championship, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep. That was your.
You got hurt.
Yep.
And so we got to talk a little bit about that because, you know, I was there. So what happened is, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but
no. Take it.
As a racer and a friend, I started several minutes behind Cody, and it was at a District 14 Enduro 2007, Goshen, Indiana. It was the last race of the year, and
2-day.
It was a 2-dayer.
Yep.
And I come across the cornfield, and I looked up ahead, and I'll never forget seeing he had a bright yellow helmet. He always had yellow helmets for some reason.
Yeah.
And which is good. You could pick him out.
Yeah.
Like before you hit him, you could see him.
Yeah,
exactly.
Started wearing yellow after Matt started following.
Maybe he was a target. It was a target. So anyway, I see him laying in the field. I'm like, man, what's going on? And I was not in any kind of championship hunt. I was actually leaving to go to Chile 2 days, literally 2 days after that. So I tossed the bike off to the side, and there's Cody on the ground. I mean, in agonizing pain, and he's a tough dude. And I'm like, man. So we got help. I actually got back on the bike, went over into the woods. There were some people hanging out. Told them to call 911, and they came probably pretty fast. And
it didn't feel fast, but
no, probably not at the time. In my for being out in the middle of who knows where.
Yeah.
I mean, and thank God those people were out in the woods. Because it would have been a while before a course marshal would have came. So anyway, ambulance came and actually when I got back, remember they had the splint on your leg. They fastened the splint, and I'm like, get that off his leg.
That was a rider.
Was it a rider?
Yeah, remember he had all the sticks with the zip ties around me.
There you go. That's cool.
Yeah. And I'm like,
besides, my leg wasn't broke though. But.
No, we thought
the leg wasn't broken. He still splinted it.
Yeah,
we thought his leg was broke, and that was the assumption. And so, they hauled him off, and then we had to meet him at the urgent care there in Goshen, Indiana. But I'll let you kind of elaborate what happened, and then we'll kind of walk through that a little bit, because it's a big part of your story.
Yeah, it was
to this day.
Yeah, it changed my life for sure. So, going into that race, I was within I think 1 point or 2 points of Blair Bersano, and I had to beat him one day to win the District 14 championship, and that would have been my first one I ever got. So I think there were 6 sections that day, and going in or through the 5th section, Blair was a couple minutes ahead of me, and I come up around a turn, and Blair's sitting there kicking his bike, and I'm like, immediately I'm like, okay, I've won. All I got to do is go to the finish, and I've beat him, and that's all I need to do. So as enduros work back then, the time cards you had on your front fender, you could tell how you're doing, this and that. Well, Leonard Keene, he was a real good friend of mine at the time. He had came up to me and he says, "Hey, did you see Blair was in the woods kicking?" I said, "Yeah, I did." He says, "Well, hell, you got this beat. You got it won." I said, "Yeah, it's sweet." He said, "Hey, by the way, how you doing today?" I'm like, crap. Leroy had me beat by a minute. So as a smart man, I should have been like, you know what, Leroy, I don't care. You can have it today. Well, I didn't. So the last section of the day, I tried kicking her up a notch, and it wouldn't have changed anything really, but come out of this woods, and as far as you could see, there was, it was cornfield. Well, it was cut, so it had all the corn stubble, and I get going, all of a sudden I'm catching a slower guy ahead of me, so I never chopped the throttle. I cut like 4 corn rows over off the main trail, and so I'm out in that field, and I'm just tucked and going, and felt like I was doing 90 mile an hour, but on a YZ250 it's about 55 probably. So I'm going and going. And,
with a breeze behind you.
Yeah, right. And so and all of a sudden, last minute, I saw this huge rock right in the middle of the field. And, at that point, you can't do anything. So you just get ready for it. And that was pretty much the last thing I kind of remember until I woke up to the guy putting the sticks on my leg. And then I was in and out. I was kind of like, just in shock. So I, at that point, you look down and your leg's going all sorts of ways. So you're like, all right, I broke my leg, But what I didn't understand is why I was in so much pain. I'm like, man, I actually witnessed Matt break his leg one time, and he was laughing about it. And I'm like, man, I'm so weak. Like, why? Matt's over here laughing about it. I'm over here crying. And so, like,
well, it didn't make sense to me either. I actually felt good about myself. I'm like, I'm like, dang, I was telling jokes. Cody's crying.
Yeah, I was crying, man. I was hurting. And so they get me up on like a UTV or something. Yep. I don't know if you were there for that, but don't remember a lot of that until I got to the hospital, and they must have put me out under anesthesia, and in between all this, I had two big doctors or nurses like on top of me, and I'd wake up to me screaming like at the top of my lungs, and then I'd like pass back out, and then I'd wake up. And, come to find out later down, I dislocated my knee. And when I did that, I severed my main artery.
Oh.
So that's where all the pain was coming from. So, they were gonna amputate my leg there, from the knee down, because it wasn't a trauma unit. So at the time, my girlfriend at the time, she was, demanding that I get out of that hospital. Right. And so next thing I remember, I'm flying in an helicopter, and I remember making a joke. Well, I don't know if it was a joke, but I asked the helicopter guy, like, I was very uncomfortable, like it was the worst, like,
yeah, you said it was the worst ride ever.
The worst ride ever, and you can't move your head. I'm a big guy, so I'm strapped into this little area, and I'm just not feeling it, right? And I asked the helicopter guy, and I remember this, like, hey, how much further is this ride? I'm not feeling it. And he's like, 2 minutes and 37 seconds. He says it to the second.
Yeah.
And I said something to him like, God, why are you messing with me, dude? And but he probably, later had had that probably on a screen, so, so,
flight time.
But me and him didn't see eye to eye in that flight, yeah. But yeah, it was, and then got to the hospital, and I was there for, I don't think I was there for a week, 7 days or something, and went through a lot of stuff. They set me up with, they were still gonna amputate the leg, and because it was dead, all the muscles and everything were dead, so they were gonna go through all that process. So I saw oh my gosh, can't think of the
ortho
or not an ortho, but a specialist to do the fake leg prosthetic. There you go. So I went through all that, and that was kind of like really sinking in. Like, okay, if I'm seeing a specialist on this, it's coming, And then they had it. I think it was like pretty soon the next morning or something real, coming up soon. I was scheduled to kind of go down this road, and all of a sudden I got a little flicker from my toe, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's
alive.
Yeah, it's still alive. It's alive. So it was from there forward. It was all up to me to with working it and going through physical therapy and everything. But
so you severed the artery, so they redid the artery back together again, so blood could get flowing through. Yep.
And
they routed it around your knee, didn't they?
Yeah. So
down your leg.
I've learned a lot about that in this whole process, and your arteries behind your knee, kind of all tucked behind the joint, and so it's protected. Now the worst part is mine is right on the side. Like you can feel it right there. And so that's always kind of a scare riding, back riding again. I kind of have that. It's kind of gone now, but when I first started, I'm like, anything, in the woods, stick, log. I mean, like, it's anything can catch you. And, so I got a CTI brace, and it kind of protects it a little bit more. And, but it took me forever to get back trying to ride. I mean, that was the toughest thing.
Because if the audience can see on YouTube, from my understanding of it, if this is your femur and here's your tibia fibia, you hit the ground so hard as you went over the front of the bike.
Yep.
And you planted into the field. You went like this. Wasn't that true?
No, I think it was more like it went this way. My fib came up towards my face. Like,
oh, okay.
And that, because that's where, and then
that's what severed the artery.
Yeah, because it pulled it apart, up towards me, like my toes were in my face. Mm-hmm. And so that was what severed it. And then I developed drop foot, and they wanted to fuse in my ankle, and it just went through all this, and I kept going to therapy, and it finally got to where it's manageable now. I live every day, but it's
you won't forget it.
No, won't forget it. And I think at that time you brought up Chile. My dad and sister.
And my dad.
Yeah.
They were in Georgia.
At a
National Enduro.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my mom, she was home, and she come over to Fort Wayne. So I got life flighted from Goshen, Indiana to Fort Wayne. And my mom came over there, and I believe my mom was supposed to go to Chile, but she didn't.
I don't think she did.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
And but because at that point I was pretty much helpless. So
yeah,
it was scary. It was. We went from he's got a broken leg, he's just being a big wuss and crying about it.
Right.
He's got. So what I remember distinctly about that was. And motorcycle racing is not dangerous, just so everybody knows on the podcast here. No, it's what fluky things happen, and you were, and I wrote this down. You were not a crasher. You were always. I mean, you would have tip overs. We all do that, right?
Yeah.
But you were not known as a, injured all the time kind of racer. You were fast but you were calculated. You know what I mean? You didn't take a lot of huge chances. So this is just a fluky thing. But I remember when we got to the hospital in Goshen, it was like they're talking about amputating. What? That's my buddy in there. You're going to take his what? And man, it was. And then what put me over the edge was when he was down the hall behind closed doors, and we heard him screaming from in the room, and I'm just like. We all lost it. I mean, it was just like, you dealt a blow, and now he's like in pain. So it's like, oh my gosh, and then he, for me, selfishly, it's like he's trying to win a championship. I'm leaving in 2 days to go to Chile, and it's like it's just all wrapped into one. And then the funny part was, I should say funny. Speaking of the helicopter, their life flight. They're like, well, we're going to get him there faster if we take him on the helicopter. And I remember because then we had to load everything up, and then we're freight training Dan Janis, Leroy, and guys that are racers. We all quit our race to go be with him. We're freight training down to go to Fort Wayne, and here's a helicopter flying. As we're rolling in the parking lot, here's the helicopter. I'm like, why? We could have got him there. We could have saved his insurance company $100,000 or whatever it was, But anyway, so it was just, and to me, the best part of the whole story is, and he cost me $500 because I don't know if you remember.
No.
When you got home, he's in a hospital bed. You got to remember you had the wound vac.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's not going anywhere. So you remember your parents set you up in the sunroom.
Yeah.
And he starts playing Xbox or something like that. So I went out and bought a PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
I had to trump him. So I come over to visit him, and I got this damn PlayStation in my hand, and he's like, dude, you bought a PlayStation? But yeah, I bought a PlayStation. Well, yeah, 500.
Yeah, I had to kill the time with something. I mean, I was laying in a hospital bed for 6 months. I mean, I don't think I worked for a whole year. And it was crazy.
You know, it's funny, it's not funny, but I mean, you talk about it not being that dangerous, but you really watch, you watch a lot of pro riders and a lot of riders, they get hurt bicycling while they're practicing or training or whatever. It's like you're like how did he get hurt on a bicycle, but they're doing 20 miles a day or 40 miles a day, whatever it is,
right.
But they're jumping 35 feet in the air and they're going through trees at 70 mile an hour, and then they get hurt at a bicycle. It's like, but I think it's a different mentality when you are racing, that your concentration level is so much higher, and all that kind of stuff. So it does change.
Roof. And in the triumphant part of it was you ended up winning the championship.
Yeah.
You couldn't make the banquet.
No.
I
kind of did.
Yeah, the cutout.
Yeah, Leroy made a 6-foot cardboard cutout, and I
you were there.
So I made a speech. I wrote down what I would say in a speech, and then I believe I wasn't there, but they set my cutout up on the stage, and I think Leroy might have said the speech from his seat with a microphone, and
there you go.
So, and it was cool because afterwards there was like kids and whoever, they set the cutout of me up next to like the banner, and kids would come up, take pictures next to me and stuff, and I was like, well, that's cool, but I'm not there. I'm like,
wish it wasn't that, but
yeah.
Well, you still won, and then and I think that in my opinion, what was really your comeback story is not that, because at that point it was over, right? I mean, you got injured and Blair quit, or his bike DNF'd or whatever, and you won.
Yep.
But the real comeback story was several years later, and I don't remember the year, I apologize.
Yeah.
But you came back, you rode a race, you kept getting a little better and a little better and a little better, and then all of a sudden old Cody is back, hauling the mail through the woods. And when did you win again for the second time? Was that
I don't remember.
2010?
I don't know. I can't, but it was probably
several years later.
Several years later. Yeah. And I feel like after I came back from my wreck, I was faster then than I was before. All
that working you were doing, all that therapy.
Yeah, right. They kicked me in shape. Yeah. It was so my goal was, when I was laying there for 6 months in a hospital bed in my parents' sunroom, I was like, I want to race Goshen a year later. And I want to get that monkey off my back. And so Dwayne Dusendang, he an old friend of ours, he let me.
We will not have him on the podcast. How many times we'd have to bleep stuff?
Bleep.
Yeah.
So he let me borrow his bike, because at that point I didn't have a bike. And he was very meticulous, and anything that was aluminum on the bike, the exhaust was shined up.
Shine the finish right off the frame.
Yeah, and he had another Yamaha 250, and he said, "Hey, you can ride it." And I'll never ever forget this. He was like 2 minutes behind me at Goshen, and literally half a mile into this race, I buried this bike up to the gas tank, and I'm like sitting there looking at it. And Dwayne comes by, and he's like looking. He's like, "Dude, are you kidding me?"